Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Harry Unplugged, episode 22. It's been a while. If you don't know who I am, I'm Chris Mowery. I'm a 21-year-old Gen Z liberal. About a year ago, I decided to hop on social media and work on trying to help Joe Biden get reelected, and at the time, work on helping Democrats win the midterms. And who am I here with?
I'm Harry Sisson, also a 21-year-old liberal, also on TikTok. Been doing it since 2020. That was my first major presidential election. Been trying to work to get Biden elected then and now as well. We're continuing it. We're going forward. But yeah, we haven't been here in a while. And before we even get into the podcast, I will take responsibility. And I said this to Chris privately. This is largely my fault. And look at him smiling. He doesn't want to admit it. It's true. It was bad because I went to D.C. I interviewed Secretary of State Blinken. And then it was Christmas. And then it was New Year. And I was like, oh, we'll just keep putting it off. And Chris was like, let's film the pod. And now we're here. Now it's like January 22nd, and yeah,
we're here. That's okay though. That's okay. I'm disagreeing. I think the blame is to share, but regardless of that, I'm glad we're back, and we're very excited to be back. I know a lot of people have been watching our TikToks lately, our TikTok live debate. So pretty much almost every single night now, Harry and I separately do TikTok live debates where we just one-on-one debate Trump supporters. It's super fun, and a lot of people from the podcast have kind of come in and have really enjoyed it. And a lot of the people listening to this have recently bought hoodies that we made for the podcast. If you're familiar, there's a link in the description if you want to be the best person ever and check them out. But it's been really cool to see the support for us and the podcast continue as even as we've taken a little hiatus from the podcast. So just want to let you guys know that we hope you're well, and we genuinely from the bottom of our hearts love and appreciate every single one of you. And as you know, last time we started a little bit of a new format for the podcast where, for right now, basically Harry and I each pick a story, and we kind of present that story to each other without knowing about it. And it usually creates for some entertaining moments. We dive into politics a bit like we would on a personal level, like we talk in private every single day, et cetera, et cetera. So unless Harry wants to say anything else, you can start us off.
Yeah, I think I'm good there, man. But yeah, let's start off with immigration. So such a topic in the news recently. Certainly something that's going to be on the minds of voters in 2024, depending on what happens between now and then. But we have some with immigration and with the influx of people coming to the border. There does come disagreements between Republicans and Democrats, and we're certainly seeing that take place, even at the expense of people's lives, which is the main point here with the story we're about to talk about. So I'm not sure if you guys saw this, and I'm not sure, Chris, how much you saw this or read about it. But there's been some beef between Texas and President Biden, his administration, the Department of Justice. And recently, kind of on January 15th, this article was, or at least it was updated on January 15th, kind of around this time, there were 3 migrants who drowned near an area in the Rio Grande River where Texas had denied entry to federal border agents. So obviously the headline's kind of short, but you can kind of imagine that these Texas state agents were basically denying federal agents access to the river to render aid to migrants who had been reported to be struggling, and that is of course against federal law. And it's if you're blocking federal agents from doing their job, and that's obviously illegal. You cannot do that. Federal agents take precedent. But specifically, it was a woman and 2 children. I think the children were around 8 and 10 years old, and that was their mother. And they were trying to enter the U.S. near a section of the southern border where the Texas National Guard had prevented federal border agents from processing and rescuing them. So we kind of what's really inhumane about this story is that these agents in Texas knew that these migrants were struggling, and they specifically did not allow federal border agents to get there at the orders of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. We wanted to rescue the migrants, or the federal agents wanted to rescue the migrants, and they just weren't allowed to. So basically, that's the overall general synopsis of the story. And it really goes to speak to how terrible immigration, or the discourse around immigration is, to the point where we have Republicans allowing immigrants to die to prove a point, to give a middle finger to Joe Biden. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, yeah, no, wow. First of all, great story pick. He pulled it up. I obviously heard about this, but I have actually, unfortunately, not done much reading or had much of an understanding on what particularly happened here. So this is fascinating, especially seeing, what you have pulled up for the people watching on YouTube, in a filing before the Supreme Court late Monday, which would have been last week or the week before. The Justice Department said Border Patrol was notified by Mexican officials that the three drownings had already occurred when it asked Texas officials for permission to enter the area. Border Patrol is seeking to render aid to other migrants who are in distress. So Texas has not denied blocking Border Patrol from entering the park on Friday. So really fascinating. First of all, fascinating about what Governor Abbott is thinking here and doing, but also just tragically sad. I think, my first reaction to this is just the misunderstanding, I think, from people. If I could give a message to anybody listening to this, it would be, that Republicans on a very large level they do not care about the border issue. I think Harry and I have talked about, and Harry, you can tell me if you disagree, but I think a lot of people agree there's an issue at the border. But Republicans have purposely, avoided fixing this issue, and purposely added caveats to fixing it to try to heighten the blame on Biden to score political points. We saw, and Harry, you may know more about this, but some of the quotes from Republicans essentially admitting that we're not willing to fix this issue if when a bill is up in Congress, we're not willing to vote on it because we don't want to give President Biden a win on this issue. He's polling poorly maybe, or we don't want to give him a win going into election season. And this is like the same concept, this idea that like even on on TikTok Live when we debate these people, like so many people are like, what do you think about Greg Abbott sending whoever people from his state, whether they be police officers or whoever, to the border? And I'm like, because he's going to step up for the people of Texas and protect them when Joe Biden won't. I'm like, it's so gross that they pretend to like care about this issue and Greg Abbott's going to take over to fix it, when in reality the whole point is stuff like this. They just need at any cost to be able to score political points against the Biden administration.
Yeah, and what's really like crazy about this story is that the Republicans had been caught in a lie, which is like, so first of all, it wasn't just the mother and the two kids who drowned. There were other migrants. There were around 6 who were in distress. I believe the others survived except for this mother and her 2 kids. So there were multiple.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, there were multiple, and they were like watching them. Like imagine like these Texas officials at the order of Greg Abbott, like, oh yeah, we know they're there. We're just like not going to do anything about it. We're just like watching these people drown. It's horrible, horrible, just very, very sad. And they were caught in a lie. Like Texas denied these claims, but Democratic representative from Texas, Henry Cuellar, said in a statement, kind of described how this happened and how federal agents attempted to contact Texas state officials about the emergency by phone, but they were unsuccessful. Then when Border Patrol agents went to the park and asked to be allowed to render aid to the migrants, they were denied. So they like tried every step to get there, and these state officials in Texas were just like, no. And again, as I mentioned, Texas or the Republicans claim this is not true. It's not how it happened. But the DOJ confirmed these events in court. And on top of this, a Customs and Border Protection official who, according to this article, wanted to remain anonymous because they were not authorized to talk to the press, said that Cuellar's description of the events were accurate, so that they were real, and that these Texas Republicans who are trying to say it didn't happen this way or that they were allowed or whatever claims they're making are completely false. So not only are they watching migrants die, then they're lying about it, getting caught in the lie, and then doubling down. It's like, it's just crazy, man, what they're doing at the border.
Right.
Insane.
It's, yeah, absolutely. And if you are familiar, and if you're not, that's okay. Like, is it possible for you to describe for people listening, like a little bit of a background on like why, someone watching or listening may say, like why are Texas state officials at the border in the first place? If somebody asks you that, would you be able to like describe that?
Yeah, I mean, I at the end of the day, I think it's politics. I think that's kind of like the main reason. At least the Republicans, like Greg Abbott, are claiming that they're doing it to protect their border, and that President Biden won't do it, so they're going to take it into their own hands. And like we're trying to save Americans and our state and stuff like that. I see. I'm sorry. I see your cat in the thing. Yo, shout out Chris's cat.
Yeah.
They're basically trying to claim that it's just like, like they're trying to do it, but obviously it's politics, right? Like Border Patrol have the most resources and are most qualified to deal with things at the border. They have endless amounts of money to be able to process these migrants and do and render aid when necessary. Because again, just because they look different than us doesn't mean that they're not humans. But Greg Abbott wants to, get a win. He wants to show his Republican base that he's willing to take action on the border, when in reality, we've seen the Republican Party unable and unwilling to do so. So I'd say it's just politics. I mean, that's all it is.
Right. And my understanding here is that the Texas, State Patrol, for example, doesn't even have they were talking about they would protect, or if they were at the border and watched somebody come through the border, they don't have the legal authority to then arrest that person and go about that process. Is that correct? Is that correct thinking?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Again, a lot of this is federal. The borders are federal because they stretch across multiple states. And obviously, the federal government has jurisdiction over federal waterways, which is the Rio Grande is, and stuff like that. Texas is just absolutely overstepping their boundaries. They're constructing buoys, which are unconstitutional. States are not allowed to build in federal waterways without authorization or in some capacity like that without the federal government doing it. They're erecting a barbed wire, and along the border of Texas, and basically that barbed wire has become a problem because it's also hurting the federal officials' ability to do their job. So not only is it making it harder to come in, but when federal officials need to go over the wire, they can't, because it's hard and it's going to hurt them very badly. Texas is just completely overstepping their authority, and it's all politics. It's all politics. The Republicans don't want to address the border. They want it to remain a problem. We see that right now, all wrapped up in Congress. And Greg Abbott is no exception to the rule. So,
yeah, no, dude, wow, it's a it's a powerful story, and I think just the thought that again, and I made a video not around this topic, but kind of similarly, Republicans play politics with people's lives all the time. It just seems to be a consistent theme, and I've even in the video, I was and people have mentioned even never Trumpers, who are people who maybe are even at some of these, obviously if you guys have been watching, Republican, the primaries are heating up, people at those events saying, if Nikki Haley was a candidate, I'd vote for Nikki Haley. But if Donald Trump was a candidate, I'd vote for Joe Biden. Even some of these people who I may staunchly disagree with, it's just this idea that at all levels, fundamentally, including immigration, it's one party stands for something and one party stands for nothing, and they just consistently play politics with people's lives all the time, and people lose their lives, and I just think it's tragic that a story like that in today's politics goes, kind of under the radar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think that not only does it go under the radar, but I actually posted a video about this, and obviously this is very anecdotal, doesn't speak for the entire Republican Party, but the majority of the comments were, well, why is Biden letting them over? It's not why did Texas officials watch these people drown? They knew they were in distress and they didn't do anything. It's Biden has the border open, which of course is not true. And I think that politics aside, I don't know, I don't really care what political belief you are, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. Just because there's obviously a problem at the border, just because the immigration system is broken, doesn't mean we start dehumanizing migrants to the point where we watch them die, or we cheer it, or Republicans have used them as pawns, like DeSantis or Abbott, busing them to Democrat cities or busing them outside of Vice President Kamala Harris's house. For what? So they can obviously score political points. People are not pawns, they're not political points, and they're not to be dehumanized just because they come from a different country, or they look different than us, they pray different than us, they love different than us. But that's kind of the Republican mantra with immigration right now, and you're seeing it right now. This is the perfect example.
Right, exactly. I'm again, I think just the most common misunderstanding being that Biden in almost every way up to this point has tried every single possible way for him to work on the border, because again, contrary to what a lot of Republicans may believe, that being here in Kennesaw, Georgia, a lot of more people from North Georgia, very heavy Trump district, Marjorie Taylor Greene district in some ways. It's often a conversation in person where it's Biden does not care about the border. He won't do anything, and it's just so fascinating to me that Republicans have been able to spin this issue of it's just the most common misconception that he has tried to do everything. And Republicans aren't going to help him in Congress. He only has so much authority, via executive orders or allocating funding to certain places. And at the end of the day, this isn't a problem with Biden policy or something drastic that has changed via policy at the border. We are just seeing a mass influx of people. And so, it's disheartening to see again one party. I just feel like I'm going to reiterate this over and over again until 2024. One party standing for something, and one party standing for nothing. And to your point, quickly, you said like you have governors talking about this or busing people to places like New York. You live in New York City, or Kamala Harris's house in the cold, in the freezing. But I think maybe it was Gavin Newsom who brought this up, like Ron DeSantis, for example, who just today dropped out of the presidential race, thank God.
Yeah.
Was often says I'm going to be strong on immigration. He's put has a big foot in this immigration talk, and you're in Florida, you're not even this is how ridiculous this is, that I just don't think this isn't talked about. It's how are we letting someone like Ron DeSantis or some of these Republican players or governors or representatives who represent the middle of fucking Iowa? It's why do you have any authority to be a main person, a main player in this oh, I know how to handle the border, like Ron DeSantis? Buddy, Florida's not a border state. No. Why do you? It's just it seems very hypocritical to me at points.
No, it is really funny. Governors, Republican governors from states that are in northern United States have visited the border. And they're I'm going to take action to stop this. What are you going to do? What are you going to?
Yeah.
What are you going to do in Iowa? What are you going to do in South Dakota?
Yeah,
what are you going to?
Well, exactly, dude. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what Gavin Newsom said when he tore DeSantis apart on Fox, where he was DeSantis was I'm going to be tough on the border, and Newsom was buddy, You're not even a border state. I'm a border state. You're not even a border state. What are you going on about? So anyway, I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, and
good story there.
Good
pick.
And last thing I'll say on this.
Actually, very, very sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. I'm so sorry about that. I will say good pick, but very, very, very tragic and sad is also what I meant.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's the point of it. I mean, I think it is very tragic and sad, and it is the reality. And the last thing I'll say about this, and if you've been in my TikTok lives or Chris's, you probably heard us say this 1,000 times, and I think Chris kind of touched on it here as well, is that Democrats and Joe Biden have consistently tried to address the border. We've known that there's been problems at the border for decades now. Biden said for over 10 years, recently said, for over 10 years, I've thought that there's problems at the border, right? So on day one of Biden's presidency, introduced an immigration bill, Republicans blocked it. He asked for $14 billion for border security, Republicans blocked it. Biden's right now negotiating a bipartisan deal with the Republican senators on the border, so it's not just a liberal bill that Republicans are rejecting because it's against their ideology. No, it's both parties getting involved, trying to do the right thing, trying to solve an issue. House Republicans won't do it because Donald Trump is behind the scenes trying to coordinate them to vote against it, which is not my theory. Mike Johnson said it on Fox News the other day. So when you're thinking about the border, if you want solutions, elect more Democrats. You might be thinking, well, I don't feel like the border's getting any better under Joe Biden, but it's for real action to change, we need Congress, and right now the House is Republican. So vote for Democrats, and I promise that with the right numbers, we'll get some stuff done here and on a variety of different issues. We just, anyway.
Right. No, 100%. Well said. Appreciate that, Harry. Appreciate that a lot. So let's go to my story.
Surprise me, man.
I'm going to pull this up. I'm surprised. Well, I think you're going to know somewhat about it, but I wanted to touch on it. I thought it could be a fascinating discussion, and it's not really a whole article to read. It's just I'm going to pull it up just because I can. Wait, okay, I'm so sorry. My computer got angry at me for trying to do that. Let me try that again. There we go. Can you see this?
It's loading. Technical difficulties is real. Yeah, absolutely. I can see it now.
Here we are. So Nikki Haley, in her own words, this is a little bit of an article about what she said, but quote, America has never been a racist country, unquote. Now, if to get caught up here just for a second, I'm going to talk for a second. Obviously we saw Ron DeSantis drop out today. Very, very poor performance from DeSantis. Nikki Haley seems to be doing well in the polls. Donald Trump is kind of polling better than he ever has. And now it's this kind of quote unquote face off between, Haley and Donald Trump going toward New Hampshire. I think both in Harry and I's opinion is not going to be close. The face of the Republican Party is Donald Trump. So important to note here, but this is a fascinating discussion from someone who has gained a lot of popularity, where very recently, in the last few days, we're recording this on January 21st. It's being published on January 22nd. This just happened just a few days ago. And she was asked on Fox News, are you involved in a racist party? And her exact quote from Fox was, "We're not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country." And that got quite a bit of heat. Later saying, our goal is to make sure, or maybe during this, after she said, we've never been a racist country, our goal is to make sure today is better than yesterday. Are we perfect? No, but our goal is to always make sure we try and be more perfect every day that we can. I know I faced racism when I was growing up, but I can tell you today is a lot better than it was. Our goal is to lift up everybody, not go and divide people on race or gender or party or anything else. We've had enough of that in America. And then a spokesperson for Nikki Haley said later, and I'll just read part of this, and you can go check out the CNN article if you'd like. I'll link it in the description, both Harry and I's articles. If you're watching on Spotify, you can just hit the information for the episode, or YouTube, the description. Quote, America has always had racism, but America has never been a racist country. The liberal media always fails to get that distinction. And I thought this would be something interesting to bring up for a second. Then I want to play you a video of someone on CNN responding to this that I thought was just in so many words that I can't describe, especially being a white male. This was a very powerful response to something Nikki Haley said by someone on CNN that I really liked. So I'll play that. But just for a second here, I'm sorry. I have an ad playing in the background here. It scared me, but regardless of that, this stirred up a lot of stuff, and I think it's interesting because Nikki Haley, herself is a minority woman, running in a party that very much does not believe in racism. She has made comments in the past about how she has experienced excessive racism, especially growing up. You can go read about some of the things she said about, I think, being in beauty pageants or such, where, she was supposed to put, I don't know, something about how she has experienced clear, excessive racism in the past. And I want to get, your just immediate take, because I never talked to you in private about this, as I pull up this video.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think my immediate take is that's insane. That's a complete whitewashing of history. But it's very on brand for the Republicans. I think that anybody that's passed high school history, especially high school American history, will know how racist America has been historically. And that doesn't mean that we don't try to be better every day. No doubt. But you have to acknowledge the reality of our past, which is we had slavery. We had Jim Crow. We had Japanese internment camps. A variety of very, very racist times in our history. And those are horrific things. And we have to learn from those things and make sure that racism, to the best of our ability, is removed from society entirely. But that starts by acknowledging the truth. You can't just gloss over it and pretend it didn't happen. You'll be okay. So it's just disgusting. And I think it's perfectly in line with the DeSantis and the other Republicans who are trying to ban books on these topics. I mean, they just don't want it to be taught. They don't want it to be known.
Right. And even DeSantis and other That's well said. Even DeSantis and other Republicans kind of backed what she said, and this is a video from someone on CNN. It actually comes from my TikTok. I'm shamelessly like plugging here, but it's the easiest way for me to get to the actual video. Actually, I'm not sure if this is going to play in this format, Harry. I think.
Let's see.
Can you see this? Have we decided if this plays in this form?
It does. I can hear it.
No, we're not a racist. It's not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country.
I don't think I need to respond to that. In fact, I think instead you should listen to this.
I'm surprised at that because that's part of our proud history as Republicans, the fight against slavery.
Can I just say something though? I mean, we talk about this as if it is the past. We've covered stories where people have died, have been killed because of racism. Jacksonville, Florida, the Dollar Tree shooting. I mean, this is happening right now. And this is not just the Black community, right? The Japanese internment. I mean, those families and descendants are still here. My last name is Alford, not because my family chose that last name. That is the name of the slaveholding family that owned us. I know the plantation that we are from in South Carolina, and I am here. My father desegregated a school. He remembers those things. So why do we have to talk about it as if it is past? This is right now. The pain is real. The survivors of racism, we are here, right? And so if you don't have a message around that talks about the future, that talks about the present, you cannot leave this country.
So there's more to that clip. There's another couple minutes. I that's kind of the shortened version. Again, if you want to check it out, I'll see if I can leave a link to that. But I thought that was very powerful, and again, like brings up to your point about like a lot of the misunderstanding. Specifically, one of the things you said is like this was like, or you said something similar to this of like, you know, you're whitewashing history, you're ignoring the facts. You can continue to recognize we've gotten better while recognizing a lot of people's pain, especially pain that is so incredibly recent. And this is like the thing that seems to never, you know, people don't seem to understand is, you know, as a country, we have just recently, you know, gotten to the point where desegregation, or, you know, we abolished slavery and then desegregation, Jim Crow laws in the South. I mean, the first woman to desegregate a school, you know, this is gonna I don't want to get the state wrong, but Ruby Bridges, for example, I think is always the example that I bring up, and I'm gonna make sure, I want to say it's Louisiana, but Ruby Bridges right now, you know, she was the first African American child to desegregate an elementary school at 6 years old. And this was, okay, maybe this was, I'm so sorry. Louisiana. I'm sorry, Louisiana. You know, she desegregated an elementary school in Louisiana, 6 years old, and she was escorted in by, you know, agents essentially to make this happen. And, you know, to this day, she is, currently, that makes her 69 years old. 69 years old. So like, this is someone who's like very much alive and remembers that, like, you know, my parents being 60 years old, and then on my dad's side, you know, having one grandparent still alive, but that's, you know, all of them 90 or pushing 90 plus. I mean, they grew up watching, you know, in any given situation, they could have grown up that age, grew up watching people drink from different races, drink from different water fountains. I mean, this is not something that is so in the past that, like, quote unquote liberals keep bringing it up to, like, you know, divide us. This is stuff that, like, I'm sure Ruby Bridges, who's an activist now, still very much thinks about on a daily basis. I mean, think of your memories as 6 or 7 growing up in America, and hers is being the first, you know, one of the first young African American women to desegregate an elementary school in Louisiana. I mean, that's traumatizing,
dude. Like, and that's such a good point. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that when we're talking about racism in the United States. Like, the civil rights era was not that long ago. Well under 100 years ago. Kind of ended around like 1960s. You might make that argument. Some people think it ended later. Some people, you know, it's kind of up for debate. But, like, you know, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, kind of area that time. Like, that was not that long ago. It really wasn't. Brown v. Board, where, you know, desegregation happened in schools, not that long ago, mid 20th century. And, you know, a lot of those people who were against that case, or, you know, against desegregation, are still alive. You know, they're still living. They're still around. So it just shows you that like racism has been in the United States for a long time. Very recently, obviously, there's still racism in the United States in a variety of ways. And for a presidential candidate, someone who wants to represent every American in the United States and every state, to, and even someone who she herself has experienced racism, to not acknowledge that reality is disgusting. You want to be president? You don't want to acknowledge American history? I mean, what are we doing? What do you want to score political points? Is that why? Like, I mean, come on, man. We're so much better than this.
Right, exactly. And it's this idea that like there is no like free flowing, just in general, to step away from that for just 1 second, but talk kind of broadly about it, is, there is no flow of ideas in the Republican Party anymore. Like, I talk to people, again, in person, I bring this up all the time, or even on live, who say, oh, well, I'm a Republican, but I don't really like subscribe to like a lot of the MAGA movement, or like I see it as fringe. But like Donald Trump is polling better than he ever has. Like, we're talking about a guy who on his best polls like would be leading the rest of the Republican primary field by 50 points. This is not fringe. This is who the Republican Party is. And if you do not bow down to the general idea of whatever Trump wants, or the MAGA movement, or this like racism doesn't exist is one example of many ideas in America, you're just not allowed to be in the party. We will kick you out. So even if Nikki Haley doesn't believe that, she doesn't have a chance to be president in that party if she doesn't say it. I mean, I think, again, you look at the other party, there can be a wide range of ideas for different things between, even Democrats who run for positions of office. But in the Republican Party, it has gotten so staunch to this, like, you're going to fall in line and toe the line of MAGA and being extreme in these ways, or you're not going to be a part of this system. You're not going to be a part of this party.
Oh, yeah. And it's actually ironic that you say that today, of all days, the day that DeSantis dropped out. Because around a week ago, DeSantis said, you could be the worst Republican in the United States of America. If you kiss the ring, Donald Trump will say you're wonderful. And DeSantis today kissed the ring. And Nikki Haley probably is going to when she inevitably drops out. And you're right. You're right. If you're not in line with the MAGA cult, I know you're much nicer about this. You don't like to call it a cult. I call it a cult. If you're not in line with the MAGA cult, you will be extradited. You're gone. I mean, look at Chris Christie. Chris Christie, he just stood up to Donald Trump. He was a fan of him in 2016, all that good stuff. Now he's anti-Trump. He is conservative as they come. And he is, he polled like 1% in the Republican Party. He pulled 2%, dropped out of the presidential race. Along with Asa Hutchinson, anti-Trump Republican, a former governor of Arkansas, very, very conservative, extradited. He will probably never hold major office in the Republican Party again. That's who they are.
Well, yeah, that's our inside joke right there, is the Republican dungeon, man. You don't. There's so many people who exist, who are like major players in politics. Like Hutchinson is one of them, who existed in, like, I always think of like people like Mitt Romney or like Paul Ryan, who, like, you kind of get into like this like you maybe still want to be kind of involved in politics, but you get into like this like you basically criticize the guy. You're like, I don't like Trump. You're gone. No one even knows what you do anymore. How do you make money? Nobody knows. When you don't see you, I don't know what you do. I don't even know. People forget about you because you get sent to what I call the dungeon. The Republicans lock you up. They're like, yep, you're not allowed to. You're never doing anything in this party ever again. Goodbye. It's crazy.
Like Mitt Romney, 2012 nominee for president. John McCain, American war hero, veteran, decorated veteran, former senator from Arizona. A presidential candidate in 2008. Both of these gentlemen, sadly McCain has passed, but both of these gentlemen are considered rhinos. They're considered outside of the party.
Yeah.
And they're in the dungeon.
Right. And exactly. And like, right. Exactly. And like, it's just incredibly sad. Like John McCain being like such like a well-respected person. Like, one of my favorite clips all time of him is like him standing up to someone running against Barack Obama and saying Barack Obama's a family man. Someone said, I don't want to vote. I'm scared about Obama being president because I don't want a Muslim to be president. He cuts her off and says, Obama and I may have our disagreements, but Obama's a true family man. He's a good friend of mine. We're not going to say those things. Like, John McCain's like, and like you said, war hero, POW, like truly a respectable guy, and this party has like shunned him into like, he's just it's gross, this coming out of my mouth in a lot of ways, but he's trash.
Yeah,
to
I
them.
mean,
and it's just
exactly.
And even like regardless of what Mitt Romney, what actual power he holds, the reality is the power is none. He gets no media appearances. He does nothing. Nobody hears from him because he's just on the back burner, man. He's on the back burner.
Yeah, and even
meanwhile,
like
Marjorie Taylor Greene is probably saying stuff that she could never even conceive of believing in, but she wants vice president so bad that she's gonna fuck up my state of Georgia for it.
Yeah, I actually don't know if you saw this, but like on McCain, Trump recently made fun of him at a rally he was speaking at. I don't know if you saw this clip, but he basically said the day, I'm sure you remember, and for the folks listening, the day that McCain voted against repealing Obamacare when there was no replacement, 20 plus million Americans would have been kicked off their insurance automatically. McCain voted against it, and his famous vote, he just stuck out his arm and put his thumb down. And everybody in the Senate gasped and all that stuff. And Trump, on this happened in the Trump presidency, and Trump on a tirade in a recent rant at a rally was making fun of McCain, saying, well, why didn't he lift his arm that day? He just stuck it out and put his thumbs down. Why didn't he lift his arm? Like, can he not do it? Kind of stuff like that. And then once you kind of read into McCain and his history, you know why. McCain was a prisoner of war in northern Vietnam when he was serving, and he was tortured so badly, specifically having his shoulder fractured with the butt of a gun, that he became permanently disabled, couldn't put his arms above his head for the rest of his life, couldn't do it, both arms. And Trump is making fun of him for it. And that's a war hero. It's a decorated war hero that has the admiration and respect of both parties. Chris and I are liberals, and we respect the hell out of John McCain for his service, even if we might disagree politically with the late veteran. But that's the Republican Party nowadays. If you don't fall in line, they will make fun of you, even if you serve this country. It's crazy. Wow.
I mean, that's powerful. I did not see that clip of him saying that. That's wow. I mean, that's obviously I know that he's said multiple things about McCain specifically in private, but I did not know that he said something about him recently. That's just it's sad, man. It's so sad. I think it's interesting. I don't even know. I think I lost for words there. I just wow.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's terrible. It's terrible.
And I think that kind of connects back to that Haley clip. Maybe I think there is a possibility that Haley does not believe that in her heart of hearts. I really do. I think that it's entirely possible that she believes deep down that obviously America was a racist country. I mean, any logical person, anybody that's studied America and our history would obviously acknowledge that at some point, and depending on who you are and what you argue, that America has been racist. And many times in our history. And many would argue that it still persists today, of which I think, Chris and I would agree that there is a lot of racism in the United States. No logical person can say otherwise. But when Haley is trying to be the Republican nominee in a party that still admires Donald Trump and every word he says, she is, one of these Republicans that will give up the truth and give up her self-respect for power. And you see that so often in the MAGA Republican Party.
It's 100%. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance, a very, very good chance that she doesn't believe the words coming out of her mouth, and I think it's sad. I think well, people say we are a racist country. We've never been a racist country. I think the reality is systemic racism has existed, still very much exists, and a lot of, to your point, is a lot of the people who have a lot of important roles in this country, who were alive during decisions like Brown v. Board, who, were very, at some of these rallies, were very staunch against a lot of these movements. They still have important positions. So I think it's disappointing to hear, and like the woman on CNN said, to hear a presidential candidate who can't recognize, we need someone who can recognize and be a leader for all. So, there's one more point I was going to make there about just the Republican Party as a whole, just saying outrageous things, just to just lying when I guess I forgot. Maybe I'll come back to it. But again, to your point, I think there's so many people in the Republican Party, whether you want to accept it or not, that know they're lying all the time, know they're saying outrageous things, and they do not care, and they also don't have a choice if they want a job. So, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. And that's, bro. This is where it's this is why 2024 is so
right.
important.
That's where
Go ahead.
Right. And one more thing I think that kind of comes to real quick. The Joe Walsh, who I actually recently Joe Walsh is a former Republican who ran for president. I have a lot of respect for Joe Walsh. Lately, over the last 90 days, I've lost a fair bit of respect, and it really infuriates me now. Although he is very much a never Trumper, really conservative, and I really disagree with him on some of the conservative things, but very much very anti-Trump, which is good. But he served as a congressman, and he often says he tweets at people, which I really like all the time. People like Tim Scott or people like. He's tweeted at a couple of people like this, but Tim Scott's the one that comes to mind most. He's like, I know you personally. I know you, and I used to talk to you, and I know you don't believe what's coming out of your mouth. I know you don't believe that Trump's the best choice for America. I know you don't believe half the stuff you said on the campaign trail. He'll quote specific tweets and be like, I know you personally, and you do not believe this, but you've sold out. You've sold out to your country, to the MAGA movement, and it's just so gross.
Dude, that's 100% right. And you know who else does that? Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, two Republicans that served on the January 6th committee. They will come for people's throats on Twitter. I've seen Adam Kinzinger do the same thing with Republicans, being like, I've literally talked to you about this exact topic, and you said the opposite thing a week ago. And now you're out publicly saying Trump is the best. Trump is this, and especially with the insurrection, he's come for people as well. Where these Republicans are saying, "Oh, it was peaceful. There was so much love that day." I mean, what are you talking? No, people were walking around the Capitol, and Adam Kinzinger would be like, "I saw you running for your life." You know what I mean? I saw you sprinting.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the right, exactly. I think that's going to be. I would like to post a video about this. I guess it's kind of heating up that Trump's vice president pick will be
Stefanik.
Please help. Yes.
Elise Stefanik.
And there's a picture. Yes, Elise Stefanik. There's a picture of her. She calls the January 6th. The people arrested for January 6th, the January 6th insurrectionists, the people who broke the law and should serve their time. She calls them J6 hostages. Well, there's a picture of her when the J6 hostages are trying to break into the House floor, and she's bending down, hiding under, I guess what would be one of the I'm not sure what you call that, but she's essentially bending over, hiding as Secret Service is drawing their guns. But she's hiding from the J6 hostages, right? I'm sure in that moment she felt like she was hiding. It's like you're such a sellout. It's crazy.
And if she's the nominee, that picture will be everywhere. I mean, and it should be
everywhere.
And that goes for anybody, any current member of Congress, whether you're a Democrat or Republican senator, or Republican House member. Their pictures from wherever they were on January 6th should be shared everywhere the moment they're picked and they accept the choice to be Trump's VP. Because all of these Republicans
100%.
will run for their lives on January 6th. They'll privately acknowledge that Trump is responsible for the insurrection, and then gladly accept his offer to be on the ticket from the man who tried to kill them. It's crazy, bro.
100%. It's crazy. It's insane. Well, listen, good conversation today. I think, guys, real quick, we've been away from the podcast for 4, 5, 6 weeks now, however long. We appreciate you so much tuning in, still being willing to tune in. If you're new here, again, we are on TikTok a whole lot, Twitter a whole lot, Threads a whole lot. If you want to check us out, and you can always email us at the email below, which is questions@cmhsunplugged.com. We'd like to get into a mode where we do a couple of these stories, chop it up about politics, maybe talk about some of our content throughout the week, and then I want to answer questions. I really want to answer questions again, so feel free to email us, and I will just pick a bunch of questions. I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. We will next week to answer for you guys at the end of the episode, which I think will be really fun. And we'll get back into the groove. We were joking in the beginning. It's hard under lights. Podcasting can be a little bit of a different thing, so I know we may be a little rusty right now, but we're certainly excited, very excited to get back into it. We have some big stuff planned for you guys, I think that's probably going to wrap up episode 22 here. If once again we want to remind each and every one of you that we love you and we care about you and we appreciate all your support, everyone's support. The amount of hoodies I've sent out have been incredible, especially the people coming from onto TikTok Live and talking about our podcast. It means a lot. Like I said, links to all the socials will be in the description, and Harry and I's DMs are always open if you guys ever want to chat. So Harry, any final words?
No, just aside from the fact that we, of course, appreciate you guys so much, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, 100%. We'll go ahead and end it there. We will be back next week, Monday at 1 p.m. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're on Apple Podcasts or you're on Spotify or you're on, whatever, just know that we are on literally every platform. So if you prefer to switch, if you prefer to listen to us on video, you can switch to YouTube. If you prefer to listen to us on audio, you can switch to Spotify. If you prefer to listen to us on a different audio platform, you can go find us literally anywhere else, if that makes it easier for you. And we'll go ahead and leave it off there. We'll see you next week, Monday, 1 o'clock, and we'll see a lot of you guys on TikTok. We appreciate you. We love you, and have a good one.